Yes.
So now we can start. Good morning and welcome to our intergroup session. And it's so nice to see the room, more and more people coming back to the room. So this intergroup session will be an exchange of views with the Commissioner for Agriculture, Mr. Janusz Wojciechowski. I hope I did not mistreat too much the name. It is really a privilege for us to be able to welcome back Mr. Wojciechowski, who once served also as president of the Animal Welfare Intergroup when he was member of the European Parliament. And considering really the number of animal welfare relevant portfolios you were working on as a Commissioner for Agriculture, we have been very much looking forward to this exchange of views. In the last intergroup session, we focused on the new Common Agricultural Policy and the national strategic plans. Mr. Wojciechowski, I hope, will be willing to share his opinion on how the member states are delivering on the CAP objectives, where one of the objectives is indeed animal welfare, as well as go into detail on his other portfolios related to animal welfare. We will first hear from Mr. Wojciechowski and then open the floor for questions and answers. Before start, I would like to highlight, as usual, some practical aspects for the running of this session. So the meeting, as you all know, is live streamed on Interactio, and the meeting will also be recorded, and the video recording and presentations will be uploaded to the Intergroup website afterwards. There is English, German, Italian, and Polish interpretation available. Given the short time at the disposal, I would like also, as usual, to ask all colleagues to please be brief with the questions and statements. And finally, I would like to personally thank our colleagues from ECR for really helping us for this room and also organizing the interpretation. So thank you very much for that. I will immediately give the floor to Mr. Janusz Wojciechowski. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, honorable members of the Intergroup. Thank you for inviting me here today to discuss with you this important topic. Farmed animals represents by far the highest number of domestic animals in Europe. Nevertheless, farmed animals are almost invisible to most of us, and yet we rely so heavily on them. However, citizens are becoming more and more aware of farm animals' living conditions and are demanding positive change. The need for improvement in farmed animals' living conditions is best demonstrated by the European Citizens' Initiative initiative to end the cage age, which asks to ban cages for any array of animal species. It collected nearly 1.4 million signatures across the EU. This sends a very clear message from citizens. The Commission will continue to demand high animal welfare standards where EU monies are spent, but treatment of animals cannot be tolerated. The Farm to Fork strategy has further advocated a more ambitious approach towards animal welfare under the new CAP strategic plans. EU farmers are at the very center of this process. Improvements in the welfare of animals can come at a cost for farmers, and that must not turn into a disadvantage for farmers. I can surely say that animal welfare is deeply rooted in the common agricultural policy, even more so in the new reform CAP. Under the new CAP, animal welfare has been significantly strengthened. It is now part of the CAP 9 specific objectives, namely Specific Objective 9 on improving the response to societal demands on food and health. The new CAP introduced four main elements to give prominence to animal welfare. Firstly, conditionality includes certain animal welfare rules, namely protection rules for farming animals, calves and pigs, as laid down in relevant EU directives and as implemented by the member states. This mechanism is instrumental in enhancing the awareness of farmers on the importance of animal welfare. If they fail to meet these mandatory rules, their CAP payments may be reduced or withdrawn by the member states. Support for animal welfare under rural development is counted in the minimum spending of 35% of the EFRD budget to be dedicated to climate, environment, and animal welfare. Under rural development measures, support can be provided for farmers for management commitments going beyond legal requirements, such as water, feed, and animal care in accordance with the natural needs of animals, housing conditions that improve the comfort of animals and their freedom of movement, outdoor access and grazing, practices that increase animal robustness and longevity, including slower growing breeds, practices to avoid mutilation or castration of animals when it is deemed unnecessary by veterinarians, sanitary measures preventing non-transmissible diseases that do not require the use of medical substances such as vaccines, insecticides, or anti-parasitic drugs. Welfare can be supported also through the direct payments in the form of newly established eco schemes, which will represent at least 25% of direct payments for environmental, climate, and animal welfare actions. The list of actions under eco schemes to enhance animal welfare or address antimicrobial resistance include feeding plants, friendly housing conditions, animal health prevention and control plans, as well as providing access to pastures and increasing grazing period for grazing animals. Such management commitments and investment interventions can be relevant for providing support during transitional period, for example, to support farmers to move the cage-free systems. Animal welfare support can also be embedded in knowledge transfer via farm advisory service or training, as well as innovation and cooperation. So, how have member states used these tools? In recent weeks, the Commission has sent observation letters to 21 member states on their draft CAP strategic plans. 19 of them are already publicly available. The assessment of the remaining plans is in its final stages. The good news is that all member states have recognized the importance of animal welfare in their plans, although many member states need to provide clarity on their designed interventions. The majority of member states estimate share of welfare actions varies between 20 to 50%. 9 member states have opted for animal welfare interventions under the eco schemes with a budget estimation around 1.4 billion euro. The main welfare interventions proposed are in the form of obligatory grazing. 16 member states are providing welfare interventions under rural development commitments. The majority of these measures are targeted to provide more space for animals. All member states have embedded under the farm investments the support to upgrade of the holdings, including improvements needed for animal welfare and biosecurity. Few member states foresee the need for supporting quality schemes where welfare rules are integrated. One member state included a specific support to farmers for participation in animal welfare labelling scheme. In total, the public budget estimation for welfare support under various rural development interventions is estimated at around 2.8 billion euros, calculated only by measures directly allocated for welfare under NV Klima on farm investments and cooperation. NV Klima is a majority contributor. The majority of animal welfare interventions are targeted for reducing stocking density of bovines and pigs. However, it should be noted that some of the proposed commitments have been rather modest, and the ahead value for and direct effect on animal welfare has been uncertain. For example, Morley providing 10% additional space. A few member states have noted clearly in the description of proposed welfare measures a support to the transition to cage-free farming system, mainly for laying hens. The implementation of higher welfare standards is expected as well as from the increase of the organic sector. The Commission has carefully reviewed the proposed plans and communicated several observations to Member States, some relevant for most countries, others for one or just a few countries. Specifically, Member States are requested to describe how their proposed actions go beyond standard practices and how they will concretely lead to improve animal welfare. To integrate further actions improving the welfare of pigs, in particular to address tail docking practices, to encourage the keeping of laying hens, calves and sows in non-confined housing system, to facilitate the transition in response to the European Citizens Initiative and the cage age. To conclude, on a final point, the Commission is about to review EU animal welfare legislation. This review will take in the existing marketing standards and look at options for animal welfare labelling in order to better reap and transfer along the food chain the added value that products gain from welfare-friendly practices, the switch to more sustainable farming systems with increased animal welfare standards improves farmers' reputation in society and raises confidence in their work. The European Union's high animal welfare standards also contribute to the good reputation of EU agricultural products and partially explain the high demand for them, which ensures a better income for the farmers. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer for your questions and to hear your suggestions, your opinions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you, dear Commissioner, for this overview, a lot of information on the various dossiers. Mainly, you spoke about the strategic plans and other files that will have an impact on animal welfare. And I'm also looking forward on the revision of the legislation regarding animal welfare. So there's still a lot of work to be done there. But I open immediately the floor because my colleagues were quickly raising their hands, and I start with the one that was the most quickest this morning. That is Mr. Thomas Weiss. You have the floor first, and then I will, as you know, change woman, man, so that you are aware that we have this gender balance in the questions. Thomas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tilly. I wasn't aware that I was so quick today, but fine. Dear Commissioner, I have several questions, some of them directly related to CAP. Let me start with those. Do you see in the CAP plans of the member states a serious attempt to invest into local slaughterhouse infrastructures. It can be from the second pillar, also in cooperation with the economy. It can be also from first pillar investments directly with farmers. Do you see that there's a real attempt to invest and reinvest into local slaughterhouse infrastructure that would prevent a lot of live transports? And in relation to the live transports, I'm sure you're aware that we still have a big legal gap when it comes to ship transports of animals. The ship transports are basically a legal limbo, even though there is an ICJ ruling from 2015 that clearly says EU welfare standards have to be met until point of destination. So I don't know where you are in this discussion within the Commission, but very concretely on CAP, do you see that member states are informing their farmers that they can actually note on their sales papers that they do not want their animals to go into export into third countries? And if you have not looked into that, maybe you could look into that and hand out an information to the member states or towards the farmers directly that this is possible, and so they can prevent their animals to end up on one of the really cruel ship transports. Second part is the question on you know that I'm supporting high standards for our farmers very much. I'm a farmer myself, but we also need to make sure that we're not kind of dumped in the prices by imports from abroad. Where do you see the prospects on also demanding certain animal welfare standards or raising the demand on animal welfare standards when it comes to imported products? And last but not least, EFSA, based on the recommendation also of the inquiry committee, is working on researching the spread of multi-resistant bacteria across Europe through live transports within European Union. Do you know if there's any results already, and are you in cooperation with EFSA on that task? Thank you.
That's already a tough round of questions. I don't know, dear Commissioner, if you want to reply immediately, or do you want to have another?
Maybe it's
gather.
Okay. Four questions. Yeah.
Okay, I give then the floor to Anja Hazekamp, and I note down the others that raised their hand now. Anja, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Dear Commissioner, dear Janus, I have two questions for you. The first one is about the Organic Action Plan. To bring this in line with the Farm to Fork strategy, we need 25% of the agricultural land to be organic. In some countries, like the Netherlands, we have only 4% organic production, and they are lacking ambition in this area. What are you going to do to make sure that the goal of 25% minimum is achieved by 2030? And the second question, due to the inappropriate discussion about food security and the war in Ukraine, we see that several sustainability measures are postponed or neglected. And focusing on animal feed is not solving this problem. Commissioner, we see a lot of pressure here from farmers' lobby to further delay and postpone animal welfare legislation and sustainability measures. Can you, as the previous president of this animal welfare intergroup, guarantee us that you will make sure that foreseen revision of animal welfare legislation, such as the cage age, the transport regulation and slaughter directive, that you will make sure that this revision will not be postponed? Thank you.
Do you want to take another round of questions, or do you want
One more.
One more? Okay. Then I take Michel Wiesik. Good morning, Michel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the floor, and thank you, Commissioner, for being with us here today. I will have just a simple question regarding the Slovak strategic plan that was submitted by Slovakia quite late, and contrary to other member states, Commission has still some days for its reply. So I'm quite curious whether you can shed some light into what the position of Commission towards our plan is, whether we really fit the EU objectives, and especially so with regard to animal welfare standards and contribution to Farm to Fork strategy. Simple as that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all these questions to the three of you, and I give the floor back to the Commissioner of Agriculture, please.
Powiem w języku polskim.
I'll reply in Polish. Now, Mr. Weiss asked about slaughterhouses and local slaughterhouses. Indeed, it is one of the ways to shorten the farm-to-fork path and lessening the suffering of animals. Now, if there are specific programs in strategic plans, or they are translated into very specific plans at member state levels, then we are very much in favour. I know that some member states have included this topic in the Recovery and Resilience Fund plans, and I know that local slaughterhouses are mentioned in some of those. It's extremely important so that transport does not take time and animal suffering is lessened. Now, when it comes to transportation and generally review of legislation concerning animal welfare, I have to say it's the remit of my colleague, Mrs. Kyriakides. She is in charge of the review. Obviously, we are always in touch. As a commissioner responsible for agriculture, I'm vitally interested in that topic. As of now, however, we are focusing on achieving as much as possible when it comes to animal welfare in strategic plans. We are on track. Let me add the following. There are three possibilities here. Animal welfare as eco schemes, and I'm happy that many member states are favouring this approach, and I hope many more will jump on this as well, because obviously the whole thing is not yet closed. I mean, it is still possible to join. So I believe that member states, while they are discussing the national strategic plans, will take this into account. Those strategic plans are available and the letters sent by the Commission are available. Some countries are still not ready, but everything is transparent, and it is important to run a dialogue with societies, but member states are involved in that. Now, those eco schemes and the second pillar supporting animal welfare investment are all important. We are very much on track when it comes to expenditure. That has to be much higher than it has been so far. In the rural development plans, we had the only possibility for doing that, but now it will be more. It used to be 1.5 billion euros, and now, even in eco schemes only, you can see amounts that are much higher. Even more in the second pillar, and I believe those amounts are going to only increase. I believe it will multiply significantly. Now, Mrs. Hazekamp asked me about organic farming, that we are not ambitious enough. Well, indeed, it is going to be discussed with EU member states. Organic farming plays an important role in ensuring animal welfare. We'll be encouraging our member states, including the Netherlands, to make sure that they are more ambitious. My country, Poland, has opportunities that have to be used, and other countries are able to do so as well. So we are running a dialogue, and those strategic plans should be adopted by the end of June, at least for the countries that met the deadlines. It is entirely conceivable that there might be two stages. If the plans are not complete, then there might be some extensions, 2 months, 3 months, if animal welfare provisions are not thought through well enough. Now, when it comes to legislation and what you've asked about, the reviews, now reviews being planned for next year. Perhaps we will do that a bit earlier. We've been saying for some time that the review needs to cover all regulations, all provisions. Now, Slovakia. Well, I'd rather not evaluate it now. It's going to be done in an official observation letter, and then we're going to wait for 3 weeks for the reply, and then it will be time for a public debate on that strategic plan, as will be the case for any member state, including Slovakia. Thank you.
Everything clear? Any follow-up question? Yes, I have you all on my list. Don't worry. So I go to the next question, and that is by Aurélie Veigneux, indeed, for the next question. Next woman I have on my list. Please, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame le Président, Monsieur le.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Now, European citizens want real developments in terms of the ill treatment of animals. Public opinion is getting increasingly dissatisfied because promises are made but rarely kept. Now, with regard to agriculture, very often farmers in France feel that they're abandoned, that they have to deal with constraints, that they're the only people who have to deal with the red tape and the administrative burden, and they feel that they're not understood. So radicalized groups are set up, and these groups are minority groups, but they are imposing a vision which is quite different from what farmers really believe in. So what do you intend doing, Commissioner? What do you intend doing to help farmers who have to contend with these extremists? And then we have unfair competition. Now, European farmers find themselves in a disadvantageous position vis-à-vis other nationalities, non-EU, where profitability counts and productivity. What about free trade? What about enhancing local produce? This would help enhance animal welfare in Europe. And what about the marvelous projects which the EU is always supporting? Why aren't they implemented? Why aren't farmers placed in a position to be able to keep promises met in terms of animal welfare? So Europeans want practical solutions. So let's provide practical replies to the questions. Thank you.
From Portugal, and this is Francisco Guerreiro. You have the floor, Francisco.
Thank you, Tilly. Mr. President, thank you, Commissioner. I'll go directly to the 2 points. The first one, it was also addressed by my colleague, and I don't think we had a clear answer, and it's regarding the attacks that are coming to the farm to fork strategy, so the goals that are stately cleared on the strategy. And obviously, the unfortunate events that happened on Ukraine show us that we really need to rethink our way of producing food. And when we talk about grains and cereals, 60% more or less is directed to feed animals, and so they are not directly to humans. And we also have some used, more or less 12% in industry and biofuels. And if we want to accomplish the farm to fork strategy, we really need to invest on plant-based solutions and help farmers doing that transition. And so it was not clear for me what is the position of the Commission, because Timmermans already spoke in favor of farm to fork. And I want to know if the Commission is united in defending farm to fork and its objectives, and helping the farmers shift to more plant-based production. And the second question is very broadly, because I also don't understand the position of the Commission. I know it's a new subject. and we are talking about novel foods. But what's the position, the Commission position on cultivated cellular meat? If it has a position, what is the safeties concerning this new type of production? Because, well, we know that some startups are starting to produce this type of foods, and then they will make their products arrive to EFSA. And if the Commission has some type of analysis on this type of new industry, what are the concerns? If we could at least broadly talk about it, it would be interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you. And I give maybe the floor to a third speaker, a third member of the European Parliament, and that would be Annika Bruna. Please.
Madame la Présidente, merci. Bonjour à tous, Monsieur le Commissaire.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner, and thank you for coming here to reply to our questions. Could I come back to the question of exports of live animals to third countries? Now, without referring to the awful suffering endured by these animals, as we all know, when they're exported in this way and when they arrive in these countries, today the war in Ukraine is giving rise to a food crisis throughout the world. It's a tangible reality. The products, agricultural products, the prices are going up, the price of feed is going up, and third countries won't be able to buy animals raised in Europe because of the higher prices. Do you not think, Commissioner, that the time has come to really query the exploitation and the exportation of animals? Would it not be more appropriate to privilege the production of cereal and the supply of meat to the European market?
And
Thank you.
I give now the floor to the Commissioner back. Please, you have the floor.
Dziękuję bardzo za wszystkie.
Thank you very much for all those questions. With respect to the question asked by Mrs. Magnier, that is animal welfare and the public and what the farmers think about animal welfare itself. Well, I'd like to say the following. Animal welfare is often portrayed as something that really is not compatible with farmers' interests. But as a matter of fact, it is only natural, a natural part of our farmers' work. They do care about their animals because they want to, well, make sure that animals are healthy, happy, but it also translates into economic benefits. I remember I was in Latvia. I visited a holding with lots of cows, milking cows. And I remember one of those farmers saying that animal welfare for him is really important. The animals are outside, free, and it turns out that he doesn't need to use the services of veterinarians as much because the animals are healthier. So animal welfare is very much something that farmers take to heart. I am in touch with breeders, with farmers on a regular basis, and I have to say they are feeling that they are treated unfairly. They seem to be perceived as those who are against animal welfare, when in fact they do want more instruments in those strategic plans with regard to animal welfare. Let me give you an example. Poland. Animal welfare is a subject that was part in the CAP, and it turns out that it's very attractive for farmers. So more space, summer grazing, straw. So very simple practices. And it turns out that farmers are very much willing to introduce those practices, and they are very happy that there are additional payments for that. Now, in future strategic plans that are being adopted, that will be adopted, I'll be encouraging for more and more practices of this kind. Meat. Well, I don't believe it's the remit of myself or Commissioner for Agriculture to tell consumers what choices to make and what to buy. I strongly believe that we have to encourage farmers to improve animal welfare. For example, fewer animals in the spaces provided, less industrialism. And let me remind you that the Commission adopted legislation concerning emissions. And then there is a threshold of 150 units. And above that, agricultural holdings are going to be treated as if they were industrial holdings. Now, the level, that threshold is going to be decreased for pigs and poultry. So I assure you that the Commission is taking action to make sure that the intensivity of farming or breeding is concerned. Now, Ukraine, yes, we are following the situation closely. We know that some holdings have been destroyed during the war by military intervention or because there was no electricity, for example, which has a destructive impact. There are huge losses, which means that we also have to be careful. There are threats with respect to excessive concentration of production, because this is what Ukraine often experienced. Mr. Guerrero, well, I wouldn't like to encroach upon other commissioners' remits. I am responsible for agriculture when it comes to food production by natural methods and agricultural land, including animal breeding, animal production. Now, with respect to a farm-to-fork strategy, it is still topical. It remains in place. We're not diverging from it. There are no dissenting voices here. From the very beginning, we've been saying very clearly that we'll be monitoring that strategy with respect to food security. If there are threats and risks, we are going to review our strategic objectives. Indeed, one threat did materialize. What we're talking here about is Ukraine and grains. Northern Africa, the Middle East are going to be affected seriously because this is where exports went. So yes, we are aware of it. So we're not diverging from other actions like organic farming or animal welfare. There are no risks with respect to food security, so there is no point in giving up on short supply chain, for example. Quite the contrary, all those initiatives actually contribute to food security. We have been prepared. If food security is threatened, then we will be reviewing our strategic objectives. So far, for 1 year, we have suspended the duty of not using certain parts of the land. It might be prolonged for another year for more time, but that's it. Free trade agreements, Mrs. Manier also asked about those. In all agreements, We're trying to ensure equal treatment, equal standards and requirements. I think it's going well, better and better. Those issues are included in further agreements. There is an understanding that it is in the interest of exporting countries, those that wish to export their product to the EU, to make sure that their standards are up to scratch. And they do understand that, they do appreciate that. Maritime transport. Now, with respect to maritime transport, I have to say that the situation is often dire. And yes, we have to organize our food systems so that the farm to fork path is as short as possible. Instead of being local, we often transport on a very large scale. So yes, there are possibilities to reduce that. And indeed, transport of live animals is not really the right way. It's not really a humanitarian approach. It's very hard to make sure that the conditions are right, even though there are some requirements with respect to those. But really, if you think about it, it's an economic loss. I'm sorry if it sounds cynical, but really what you're transporting is a product that is not really processed. I don't really like to say that. It sounds a bit off, but I just want to say that it does have an economic impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then the next speaker will be Niels Fulksang, and then I have Sarah Wiener and Maria Neuschel. And then Anja has another question I noted down. Is that right? Yeah. But the first to speak now, it would be Niels Fulksang. Please, Niels, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Commissioner, for coming here to discuss with us. I've been following your work when you contributed to the work of this group, this Intergroup for Animal Welfare. And I indeed am happy that you now have a position where you can also contribute very much. I think the Commission has taken many good initiatives, including the proposal that will come on phasing out the cages. I think that's a great step in the right direction. And I also note that when you were a member of parliament, you were a strong supporter of the 8-hour limit to animal transports, and I hope that we can continue the work on that. My question regards a campaign that we've started on, which is called EU for Animals. It is about having the name animal welfare in the title of one of the commissioners. 118 MEPs have signed an oral question. We want to discuss this with the Commission. We have seen many times that animal welfare is being thrown around between different commissioners and different ministers, and we think it would be useful if one of the commissioners has the name animal welfare in the title. And we're going to push for that, and we hope that we can work together on this with you. So I would like your opinion on that, or maybe some reflections from your side, whether you think it could be a good idea to introduce the name animal welfare in the title of one commissioner in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Niels. And then I give the floor to Sarah Wiener.
Vielen Dank für das Wort, liebe Frau Vorsitzende. Vielen Dank, Herr.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wojciechowski, that you're here with us and have made possible this exchange. Now, a lot has already been said with regard to animal welfare, transport, slaughter, and I simply wanted to close the circle, and I wanted to come to the issue of breeding. Now, when we look at animal welfare, animal protection, we look at the various environmental issues, more space for breeding, for raising, but there is no regulation with regard to breeding overall. And I think, of course, the animal comes to existence with breeding. So indeed, we have to breed in an effective fashion. We need more meat, more milk. There's the issue of costs with increased demands and standards for animal welfare. So we have to come to some sort of agreement with regard to how breeding ought to be dealt with in order to promote it, to strengthen it to the extent possible, and to make it all very, very possible, economically and financially speaking as well. Now, I don't want to go into the much tortured turkeys because they have to have an if you like, developed turkey breast. I won't go into those particular details, but and of course that involves a very, very short life with much suffering. But I would like to point out that of course it all has to do with the proper fodder and food. We have different energy fodders, and in the time of a crisis, we don't have a clear road for the future. When we speak about area, we're speaking about, of course, the need for a larger area. We're speaking also about gas, increased methane emissions, and here these particular issues have to be taken into consideration as well. To have effective breeding, livestock raising, we have to take these numerous different factors into fact. Of course, people want to have natural food without too many additives of the different types of additives, the different types of preservatives, the different types of issues that lead to or help to fight different types of membrane inflammations, which are then in the food. This is something that we have to speak about as well. The various, in other words, elements that go into breeding and raising, which affect natural food in the end. So indeed, let's take a look at some of these various problems involving raising and breeding. Thank you.
I will give also the floor to Maria Neuschel and then give you the floor to answer and then give the floor back to Anja. And I have also a question coming from Petras Austrovicius on foie gras. But first of all, Maria Neuschel.
Ganz herzlichen Dank, Herr Kommissar.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Thank you very much that you're here. I'm sorry that Well, thank you very much. I'll be very, very brief. I have two concrete questions, perhaps already responded to. I came a bit late. Now, with regard to animal transport, of course, can we stop it altogether for Ukraine and for Russia? So the export of live meat or live animals through the Ukraine to Russia. This isn't the moment for it right now, of course. Now, with regard to the national strategy plans, with these national strategy plans, I am thankful that it was made clear by the Commission that it's extremely important that as concerns animal welfare, that everything that's there ought to remain there. In other words, we have to be very, very careful with regard to these standards. Now, in parts of Germany, however, it is possible. In other parts, it isn't possible to adhere to those particular standards. And I think immediately we have to address this issue, that you use your strength and your power, that we have a clear path with regard to animal welfare throughout the European Union. I'm very, very insistent on this with you, and I understand the difficulties that exist, but you understand that all of us here are behind you. when you make it very, very clear that strategy plans that don't serve animal welfare, that they not be implemented, and we need your weight here. Thank you.
And just to give them
Thank you very much, Maria.
floor to Anya, and indeed there were some questions that were maybe not very clearly answered. Also, if there are some other questions, we can also do them by written, I think, those who are not answered. But Anya, I give you the floor, and then just shortly the question on foie gras.
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, you were quite firm when you said in the answer to my colleague Guerrero that you will not tell consumers what to eat. And I think especially when we talk about meat, it is quite strange because it's better for animals, better for the environment, climate, etc. But if you really don't want to tell people what to eat, does that mean that you are going to stop with the promotion campaigns and promotion schemes for meat, especially since plant-based alternatives promotion campaigns were rejected by the Commission?
I think that's a very good question. Yes, I have a question here coming from Petras Austrevix, but maybe if you don't have the time to answer it now, maybe by written. So that is the question that was already raised, and it was signed by quite a number of MEPs that want to change the minimum liver weight that is required for geese and ducks in order to have the foie gras, the label of foie gras. So those minimum liver weights were established in 1991 and 1995 based on documentation sponsored by the foie gras industry. So can the Commissioner say when a proposal to modify the existing marketing standards will be ready for the foie gras? Because this would already then be one cruelty less if the liver doesn't need to have those weights that are foreseen right now by the regulation. So, but I give you the floor to answer the last questions that were coming up.
Bardzo króciutko, jeśli chodzi o tę koncepcję.
I'll be very brief. With respect to the animal welfare phrase being part of a commissioner portfolio, it's interesting. Obviously, we could always get better, but I have to say that animal welfare is something that the Commission takes very seriously. I very much appreciate my collaboration with Mrs. Kyriakides. Obviously, as a commissioner responsible for agriculture, I have to do my utmost to make sure that animal welfare is ensured. But indeed, it is an interesting idea. With respect to animal welfare, there has been a lot of progress in the common agricultural policy. Maybe it's not visible now that much, but I hope that you will see animal welfare featuring prominently in the national strategic plans. It used to be 1.5 of the second pillar that was assigned to animal welfare, and then if you look at all funds, it was even less. But now the financial contributions are going to be higher, and I'm sure that they will yield positive results. We will be encouraging, I want to assure Mrs. Neuchel, we will be encouraging member states to promote animal welfare standards. Some member states haven't really responded to our questions about antibiotics, for example. So we've been very clear about that, and we will be exerting pressure on member states to be more ambitious. Mrs. Wiener, you talked about transportation and animal feed. I agree. Animal welfare is a multifaceted issue, and we have to look at all the different dimensions. Exemplary animal welfare should come in stages. The more animal welfare standards are being adhered to by a farmer, so for example, more space, additional payments, they should be getting more payments, more money. So, for example, some additional measures like no cages, the right food, etc. We know that better food translates into long-term benefits. I remember a conversation with an organic farmer in Hungary, 200 hectares and 130 cows. He produces organic milk, and he said that he can't even imagine husbandry in a traditional way because the cows live much longer in his holding, over 10 years. Okay, fair enough. He maybe produces less milk, but if you look at additional premium payments, it's actually profitable, even though he produces less. So I think the measures we are undertaking can really be an encouragement, an incentive for farmers. With respect to foie gras, the Commission is very much open to potential changes. We have even had some preliminary discussions. In some countries, there's a full ban, but when the production is allowed, then we do need to consider that. It is being analysed. Chair, thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. I really regret that I can't stay longer and answer your detailed questions in a more detailed way, but I am very much happy to come again. And once all the strategic plans are ready, I would be delighted to come here and talk about those strategic plans. Thank you very much.
I would ask the members not to run away, and also the Commissioner. There is the question from several persons to take a picture together if you want. So just to come in front that we take family pictures, and thank you very much again for being with us. And I know you have a very busy program, so thank you very much for your time. And we know your engagement, your commitment to animal welfare, but stronger statements, and we would support you even more. So just the next meeting we have on the 9th of June. Save the date.